Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I'm going to try something a little bit different. You know, very often it seems a little bit weird to soliloquize, so to speak, just to talk about random things on the channel, because it's a tabletop channel. So what I figured I would do is, well, exactly this. I need to take apart this Shabazz, just get it all cleaned up, greased up, etc. It's been a little while, and actually last time I did a take apart with it, I ended up using a lubrication that I was, given to try, the prototype lubrication, so to speak, but didn't end up liking. So it's not running as nicely as I'd like. So I'm going to go ahead and take this guy apart and clean everything up. But at the same time, I'd like to talk about something that I've been thinking about a little bit lately that might be of interest and of relevance to some folks in the community here. And that is the idea, and it's actually nicely symbolic with your Shabazz here, that is the idea of staying in one place, helping you fall behind. You know, the thing that's been making me think about this idea, and I'm not really going to explain how to disassemble and maintain the Shabazz here, because you guys, there's a video about that. In fact, Tim Reeves got a better video than I do. But anyways, what I want to talk about is sort of this idea. The thing that made this actually come up to mind recently is the Shirogorov Neon Zero. This is in many ways another one of the, Shirogorov at least, is another one of those companies that's viewed as sort of a pinnacle in the everyday carry world. And that is also now getting to the point of having elder statesman status, right? Just because, well, I mean, Shiro is well known. Shiro's been around for a little while, and they earned a reputation for very good quality. And the thing that makes me, the question that I always have when I'm dealing with a company like that, a company that has an amazing history, and especially a model that has a lot of history. You know, the Shirogorov Neon is the neon light that is what I handled originally. It's one of my very first, well, not very first, but it's one of my early high-end knives that I picked up and reviewed for the channel. And it is undoubtedly a very nice knife. I would even go so far as to say, at the time, certainly, it was a gem. But there's always a situation when you have a pocket knife like the Shabazz, like the Shirogorov, like many others, by the way. I don't want to make it, I don't want to pick on Chris Reeve or Shiro at all. I mean, this is a thing that many companies face. But there's always that feeling of when you stay still, when you keep doing the same thing over and over again. For instance, the Shabazz really hasn't changed all that much, the Shabazz 21 at least, in, the last, well, 21 years. They're now doing the 31, which is an incremental improvement, but unfortunately, they're also, the prices have crept up over the years as things. There's always that feeling of moving forward in time, but maybe not updating the product, maybe not making major changes to the product, and that can actually have a negative effect on the approach, because what ends up changing a lot is, and I'll go ahead and I'll put the Shiro up in the corner here, I'll let that bear smile at you and ask you over and over again, $715, why? Anyways, this is a problem, because when you end up doing the same thing for a long time, and a long time, by the way, in an industry moving as quickly as the pocket knife industry, I don't know, that ain't all that long. But when you end up doing the same thing for a while, making the exact same design, or making the same design with very minimal changes, without doing things like either lowering the price or changing the quality to keep up, it can really easily feel like you're falling behind. As is the case with both the Shabazz and the Shiro, here, they are both excellent pieces. There is really not, certainly with the Shiro, I actually have more gripes. There are things that, for the price point they're asking here, should be being done better. Things like the tent ball ramps need to be there. Basically, they're not allowed that free spinning pivot. They're not allowed to cut corners at this price point. I feel like they kind of are in places. But, also with the Shabazz, there were a couple of little issues. Thumb studs. Oh, sorry, I got a South African cough at the moment. Anyways, all of those things are, they're symptomatic, though, of, when you for a while, the Shabazz was so far at the front of the pack that to make this video would be heresy, right? To say, oh my God, the Shabazz is that it was the knife of all knives for a lot of people, and for some people it still is. There's a pretty plausible argument, in the same way that Shirogorov is sort of a genre-defining set of flippers. That's their approach, right? But now that other companies have moved on and come up in the world, it's getting a little bit harder. You've got, folks like the Holtz, and given that's another small batch production thing, but they're doing knives that are frankly just nicer. They're better machined. There's a lot more effort going into them for the same price as a full production Shiro. Not that the Holts aren't necessarily full production. Or knives from companies like Rayot or We, like the Brian Nadeau, his collaborations with Rayot, I would argue are machined just as well as any of the Shiros are these days. Maybe not some of the super high-end custom division stuff, but relative to your Neon Light, I feel like they're in the very similar departments there. And so, but they're also, you know, in that case, half the price. And so this is a situation where this remains, and the Neon Zero is slightly updated. They've gotten rid of the milling because, of course, that was too much complexity for $715, but they've added some internal milling in there as well. They've changed the blade shape for some reason. Apparently what wasn't broke needed fixing. They made it a little larger. They did some changes, but it is largely the same knife, if not a slight walk back in a couple of ways. Certainly in terms of intricacy of exterior design. And so you end up with a knife that is functionally the same, but is, well, at the end of the day, not any better. And that's, well, that's just not great. That's not something I super appreciate. That's not the right... oh, that goes back there. Anyways, and so you have this weird situation of somebody making fundamentally the same product and charging the price that is just price adjusted, you know, right? Because the world goes on and things get more expensive. That seems to be the only way that the world can go. But nevertheless, you have something that hasn't changed, yet the market has changed around it, and that can make a major difference, right? If the Shabazz was still the only frame lock in the game, with this kind of a situation, given it's still relatively few in the game with a bushing-based bearing action, that there aren't that many folks doing that these days, although there definitely are some, it would be a much more compelling... Oh, damn it, I'm doing this exactly wrong. I'm doing this like any other knife when I really shouldn't be. So what I'll do is I'll pull this off of here, but I don't need to explain myself here because I have a whole video on that. What I'll do is assemble this... stop explaining, Nick. Anyways... I'll put the handle together, and then we'll go from there. Old habits die hard. But anyways, this guy is it's an absolutely spectacular knife, but a lot of folks are putting out really spectacular knives. The kind of production closeness, the kind of production cleanness that, you know, Chris Reeve for a long time was like the only game in town for is starting to be adopted elsewhere, both by smaller makers, like, you know, Koenig, Holt, etc., as well as by bigger production factories, right? I mean, Chris Reeve is no longer the only place you can go for precision machining. And so, you know what? That's one of the areas where it's lost a little bit of its speciality. Same way with the Shiros. They used to be the only game in town for amazing flipping action. Maybe not the only game in town, but the main game in town. You know, I remember way back when I was just a little infant reviewer, so to speak. Not reviewing infants, but an infant of a reviewer. Back before I knew anything, pretending for a second I know anything now. Anyways, I remember, you know, handling the Rayot Wave and thinking to myself, oh, wow, this is a real Shiro killer. This is the first time I've ever handled anything with an action that's as good as the Shiro. And indeed, it was as good as the Shiro, and that was really impressive at the time. But nowadays, there are a whole bunch of things out there that are just as good as the Shiro. If not, maybe slight steps down in a couple of small places. Go ahead, oil and tent ball. And if you're ever curious about any of the tools I'm using, they're shabazz.com/tools, just so I don't have to answer those questions here. But nowadays, it's much more common to have things that compare favorably. If not in action, certainly in price, to Shiro for prices that are much lower. And so, very often, I find myself in this really awkward position of acknowledging that, you know, a knife like the Shabazz here has been super influential in the knife-making world. You would have to be an idiot to say anything other than the Shabazz has been a force in knife-making. And you know, I am an idiot, but not that bad, right? Similarly, come on here. Just a second. Let me get this popped through. There we go. Similarly, you know, you'd have to be a little silly to say, oh, Shirogorov sucks. They brought nothing to knife making. They're just overpriced. No, that's not true remotely. They do amazing work. But it's just getting to be the case that it's a little harder to justify it, right? That it just gets after a whole, yeah, that's nice. It just gets to be the case that it's a little trickier to pay that price. When everything else has risen up to meet you, you are not allowed to stay still. And in some cases, I think what bothers me most about this little guy, and this will be kind of talked about in the full review, is that it feels like in some ways this is very lazy. I really liked a little bit, and I'm maybe going overzealous on this. The internal milling is beautiful, and, maybe they're trying for minimalism. But the thing is, it ends up looking a little bit boring. And so the fact that they did actually less than they used to on the Neon's exterior for, an increase in price just doesn't sit well with me. I mean, I already was talking about it feeling not great that they're staying still, but they need to be leaping forward. They need to be leaping forward to match other companies like CKF. The Sukhoi, too, really felt like, holy crap, why am I buying a Shiro when it's, twice the price for that? There are lots of feelings out there lots of knives out there, that make this feel a little bit weaker. And so ultimately, I think that's sort of the message from today's big old rambling rant, is that very often, it's very possible to be at the top of the game and to have something that's absolutely astounding, like the Shabazz, like the Shiro. But if you sit on your laurels, if you rest on your laurels, I suppose is the term, and you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you're not either lowering the price or increasing the quality to match and beat your competition, it's very easy to feel a little old school and to feel a little bit left behind, especially when other companies are coming in and undercutting you both on price or in some cases on quality. And so I guess that's my final conclusion, is that if you are the market leader in a given, segment, for instance, that's great. Good on you. But you need to be moving way faster than your competitors, or else what you're doing, no matter how influential it once was, is just going to end up feeling a little bit like an antique. And he's going to lose a little bit of the prestige that it once had. I don't know. Maybe this is completely unfair. Maybe I'm insane here. Let me know if you found this, format interesting. It's very off the cuff, very ranty. But anyways, let me know down. And also let me know down in the comments a knife that you feel like hasn't stood the test of time particularly well, where the competition has caught up to it. And also let me know something that you really feel like has jumped up and, has kept ahead. In many ways, I'm thinking about that for myself. And I think in many ways, some of the best custom makers have done that. This is actually another thing where, for instance, Ferrum Forge, and you thought I was done, but I ain't. Ferrum Forge is another good example of this. Hold on, let me grab a demonstration. This is the Ferrum Forge Archbishop right here. This is a beautiful, beautiful knife. This is a mid-tech, though, if you like that term. I don't. But this is a knife that is made by We Knives. Actually, this guy needs a little loving, too, so I'll go ahead and take it down. This is a knife that is made by We Knives. It was, you thought I was wrapping up, but no, we're diving back in. This is not a Ferrum Forge, from the forge direct sort of an affair. So, versus their original stuff, which given I don't know exactly what parts of it were done in the shop here in the San Diego, which parts of it were done elsewhere. But nevertheless, their other stuff was a little bit more custom-y, if that makes sense. And I gotta say, their old stuff doesn't compare well. This new generation of stuff being made by the Pro Series, Pro Line, whatever the heck it's called, honestly is way ahead of what their custom stuff was. And their custom stuff, at least for me, never really represented a strong value. And so comparing their custom stuff to their mid-tech, their Pro Line stuff now, the custom stuff doesn't stand up that well. And I think this is exactly because of that. Way back in the day, like, 3-4 years ago, it was a whole lot easier to glide, so to speak. But now you get companies like We that are making it really, really freaking hard in order to seem like you're at the front of the pack, doing production-y, custom-y sorts of things. So, I don't know. This is another great example of something that I feel like where they've actually gone the right direction. They've sort of wound down their custom line, and instead of customizing these Pro Series, they're doing the stuff that I think the Ferrum Forge guys are really great at, which are like weird anodization patterns and, strange biomechanical engravings. Elliot of Ferrum Forge is just a beast with a freaking Dremel. It's amazing. But I think they've gone the right road here, in that they've said, you know what? our previous custom stuff doesn't compare favorably to this, so you know what? We're going to pivot, and we're going to do something else that we can really compete well with. They've decided not to compete with the modern market, and instead of just jumping into it, they're embracing it. And I think that's a great example of something where the past doesn't compete that well, but where they realized it and they moved on. And so I think this is a really nice example of that. But there are custom makers who are keeping that edge, so to speak. And honestly, that's one of the most terrifying. If I were a custom maker right now, oh boy, this is a rough time to be a custom maker. Not that there aren't good opportunities for custom makers these days, but mostly because right now, so many of the production things are so damn good. You know, perfection is no longer the realm of super high-end customs from super high-end makers. I mean, certainly you can get them. You can get perfection there, but it's not the exclusive world. These days, you can get things that are damn near perfect in, you know, collaborations with factories or flat-out CNC-made stuff. And so as a result, well, custom ain't necessarily, but there are still makers who really do feel like they push beyond and above. You know, Pena knives, Enrique Pena, great guy independently of anything, but his custom knives, I've handled plenty of them. I've handled his production stuff too, and you know what? His custom knives are actually a little bit above and beyond. And that's not something I say super easily. There's a reason that really the only handmade custom knife I own is a Pena. There's a point there. But anyways, so I think he's an example of somebody who has realized that in order to compete with the modern production market, he really has to be at his best, and he's been at his best. He's done exactly what he needs to, and as a result, we've ended up with some really, that's really and pretty all at once, some really impressive little pieces from him, both on the custom world and on the production side. But anyways, so, and you know, generally speaking, We Knives, who made the knife I'm looking at right now, although it was designed by the Ferrum Forge folks, they have been another great example of kind of pushing ahead, right? You know, early on, they had a couple of little weaknesses there, and Rayot as well. Rayot's another good example because they've actually been fixing some of their weaknesses that were making them fall a little bit behind We. They had some thick blade grinds for a while there. They're eliminating that. They were Loctiting their stuff shut in a stupid way. They're eliminating that. Rayot has really been fixing a lot of their little issues and making themselves, as a result, stronger. They're staying very much at the front of the market. For a little while there, We Knives was my favorite maker by a mile because they were getting blade grinds right. They weren't thread locking the knives shut, and Rayot was falling behind. But then Rayot, I don't know who at Rayot, maybe they just naturally realized, but they realized, oh crap, you know what, if we grind these a little harder, if we grind these a little, I'm sorry, I should be more clear, they grind these guys a little bit more thin, a little more acutely, it really ends up with a better product that people are going to love. And so I really appreciate very much that they were willing to make that change and not fall behind. Now that that's done, yeah, We Knives makes great stuff, but you know what? So does Rayot. And so we're back to a place where everything is beautiful again. I don't know. It's all your method of competition, your method of dealing with it. This is too tight right now. And so some people will just keep on doing what they're doing because you know what? It worked. But as the bar keeps raising, you find yourself below the bar, and if your prices don't fall, you're going to find yourself, well, behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So I don't know. Let me know in the comments, as I was saying before I ranted for another 5-7 minutes. Let me know in the comments what brands and, frankly, what products you feel like have fallen a little bit behind the times and behind the competition, and what products you feel like have really shot themselves forward, have advanced properly, have really done a great job of staying one step ahead. Let me know in the comments, and there you go. Hopefully this was interesting. Like I said, if you found this little rant interesting, let me know. Otherwise, mostly, have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.